We spent the weekend around friends, socializing, very high energy. Got to talk to a lot of people about my podcast and creative ideas and what's going on in the world. And then we went to the last regular season Diamondbacks game. Again, high energy, hugging friends, because after an entire season, you've made all kinds of friends in the ballpark and talking about the season and our hopes and our dreams that maybe we'd make the postseason. And then we learned the next day we didn't make postseason. Quite frankly, I'm cooked. I'm done. I don't want to talk to anybody except for you, my dear listeners, because it's nice to share with somebody who understands my need for a blanket fort, understands my need for a comforting beverage, who understands that we all go through, oh, shit, I've said it before. Life is a roller coaster. And with the highs come the lows. And if you don't hit the lows, you can't go back up to the highs. And sometimes you close your eyes because it's too terrifying. And sometimes you hold on for dear life. Oh, and once in a while, you know that thing you do on a roller coaster where you put your hands up in the air and scream with joy as you go up over the crest and go back down again. The going back down again is when I really have to struggle to keep my eyes open, to be perfectly honest with you. That could be pretty terrifying, that feeling of going down. Did I ever tell you about the time I got to ride in a biplane? Talk about high energy. It was a promotion for a pizza company. They had a pair of open cockpit biplanes. And I was talking to one of the salesmen, and most of the rides on the biplane were being given to vendors in the area that supplied their pizza in their grocery stores and convenience stores and things like that. I didn't stand a chance, but I asked. Remember, one of my favorite sayings is, if you don't ask, the answer is almost always no. So I said, hey, if someone should cancel and you have an extra ride in the plane, I'd love to go. I let it go. And as I was getting ready to leave, the guy runs up to my car and says, can you be here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? I had a 9 to 5 job at that point in time. Actually, it was like 8 to 5. And I looked at him and said, yes, I'll be there. I had no idea how I was going to get out of work and take that biplane ride. So I got to work the next morning and I said, hey, I need to take my lunch a little early today. I need to take my lunch at 9 a.m., actually at 8:45. So I have time to get to the airport. My boss looks at me, thinks I'm absolutely crazy, but says, okay, sure. And I head off to the airport a few minutes later to go take a ride in a biplane. Now, if you've never ridden in a biplane, there's a whole lot to adjust to. First of all, the only thing protecting your head is a leather helmet, quite literally with a chin strap. And I put that on and I got settled into the biplane, and he explains the parachute that's strapped to my back. All these thoughts are going, wait a minute. And normally when we fly in a plane, we're in a nice comfy fuselage. We have a nice, well, sometimes a relatively comfy chair, right? Not always a comfy chair, but sometimes we have a comfy chair. But you definitely have windows and there's something in front of you. And luck would have it, in a biplane, the pilot sits in the back because traditionally that front seat was for the gunner. And so the gunner had to be able to see where you're going. So as a passenger, you sit in the front with an unobstructed view. The other thing is there's a slight angle to the plane when it's on the ground. The back wheel is much smaller. And when you get up in the sky, it levels out. But at that point, you're leaning back. So we putter down the runway and we take off. And I had this fully unobstructed view, other than the wings, of everything around me. My stomach drops. It's almost more than I can take in. We're riding along, we're riding along. He banks a little bit. Well, look how far down it is. Look how much I can see. This is amazing. This is amazing. And then all of a sudden he goes up and up, straight up, a straight line up into the sky, and then does a dive, going straight down towards the ground. Being in the front, I am looking at the ground, getting closer and closer and closer to me. And I'm feeling very self-conscious because I didn't put on makeup this morning. Because I figured, Blankenfort Day, who needs to see me? You get to see me without makeup on. Please look at my social media to see what I can look like with a little bit of time and energy. Anyway, back on that biplane, heading down towards the ground, repeating to myself over and over again, he's a professional pilot. He's going to die too. No, he knows what he's doing. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. Oh my God, we're going to die. No, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And at the last minute, it pulls up again. What a rush. In some ways, this is the most terrifying thing you've ever done. Yeah. Even more terrifying than going up in that 9-story building when I went rappelling, which I already told you about. Alive. And it just quickened your blood. My heart was pounding. And I was laughing and I was screaming and I was having a great time. He continued to do stunts. He did a barrel roll. Oh my gosh. You first a nosedive and then a barrel roll. And I'm just holding on and laughing and screaming and having a great time. Now, did I mention they had 2 planes? When the planes landed, the woman in the other plane was about as low as she could get in her seat. A very odd color. I don't think I could even define it. I'll just leave it to your imagination. If her face was a mask of horror, she didn't have quite as much fun as I did. It did take me a minute to get my body to relax and get out of that cockpit and get back onto the ground, but I did it. I was jumping up and down going, "That was amazing." And then I had to go back to work, where my boss looked at me and said, "Was it worth it?" And I had to look at him and go, "Yeah, totally. It was amazing." And I was jumping up and down in the office. Footnote, didn't last long in that job. Had nothing to do with mine taking a biplane ride. There were a whole lot of social dynamics going on, including that he had a very jealous wife. And apparently she was bothered by the divorcee receptionist. I had no interest in her husband, but whatever. They did me a huge favor. The company went out of business within a year. I'm so grateful that job didn't last and I went on to something else. Oh, and I'm so grateful that I had the nerve to say, "Oh, I need to take lunch at 8:45 in the morning so that I can go on a biplane ride." There's a whole lot of lessons here, aren't there? Sometimes an opportunity presents itself and you have to leave. You have to laugh because if the plane crashes, you being miserable, you're not going to help it. And sometimes one door closes and another one opens. Interesting thoughts. All of that. One little story, one crazy little story of a woman who got to ride in a biplane 25 years ago. I'm really glad I did it. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. And next time, I don't think I'd be quite so afraid of dying. And again, this may not be the opportunity for everybody. And I totally accept that. I'm not going to judge you. If you say, "I am never going to take up a biplane ride," I'm going to be okay with that because it's your choice. I might remind you that you never know. This could be the opportunity of a lifetime. Could change your perspective on the world. Who knows what you'll see from it there? There's nothing quite like facing death, whether it's seriously facing death or feeling like you could die, to make you feel alive again. Maybe that's the whole thing behind baptism. You die and you're reborn. I don't know. It's the thing behind roller coasters, getting to brush with that fear and still go on. That is why people do it, to feel that alive after surviving something. You need to challenge yourself sometimes. And what you consider a challenge might be what I consider easy, and what I consider a challenge, you might consider easy. Either one's okay. As I've already said, I'm not probably gonna climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Not even on my list. I just don't see me training for that. I don't see me wanting that. But I might climb other mountains, smaller mountains, maybe even one that's more than a day trip. Though I'm not really keen on camping, as we've already discussed. So maybe not. But I do love to push myself. I do like to have new experiences. So what are you going to do to challenge yourself, to be reborn, to do something a little bit different? Get out of that rut, because that rut is a trap. I don't want you stuck in a trap. I want you to be a bucket lister. I want you to live a full and rich life. By the way, I'm cleaning my glasses because I realize they're filthy and I'm holding a wet wipe. So anyway, living your best life, finding new challenges, and occasionally accepting it's a blanket fort day. Today, I will not be taking on any new challenges. I have done all my challenges for the weekend and maybe for the rest of the week because I don't want to. I put on a great big comfy shirt and I'm tucked into my blanket fort. Last night I saw a movie. It was a sad movie, and yet it was strangely optimistic. Again, talk about those emotional highs and lows. Oh, yeah, emotional highs and lows. Menopause. Now, I don't know why we repeatedly forget how our hormones and the weather, and frankly, just our sleep affects our wellness. When we're teenagers, we've got raging hormones. We accept that. When we're trying to conceive, we've got raging hormones, and we accept that. Or we don't. We don't even realize how crazy we are when you are having the fertility chase. And as somebody who's spent 4 years trying to have my daughter, Becca, and had 2 failed pregnancies, which means 2 postpartums before I ever had a baby to bring home from the hospital. When I got another postpartum, I can tell you a lot about hormones. It's a hell of a ride. And when you attach mourning and pregnancy loss to postpartum, anyone is going through that, just love them and ask them what they need. And sometimes all they need is somebody to listen because they're afraid to talk about it because it's depressing and nobody wants to hear that. But we need somebody to hear it. So give people what they need, not what you think they need. And same goes for menopause. You go through this time in your mind and your body when you feel like you are absolutely going crazy. And I've talked to lots of friends. It is a common experience to feel like you're going crazy. Your body's changing. You're like, it never did that before. What's going on? It's when your car starts acting up and you start realizing, or after you've had a huge repair bill on your car, then you start listening to your car. Like, was that sound always there? Is that a new sound? What's happening? What's going on? Your body's doing the same thing. And sometimes we're overreacting and going, oh my God, I forgot some things. Dementia's setting in. I know it's dementia. I'm gonna lose my mind. In the next 2 years, I'm gonna lose my mind. Maybe I'm gonna lose it tomorrow. I don't know. I'm gonna curl up in this blanket fort and never leave. Please don't do that. If you start to feel like you can't leave your blanket fort, call a friend. And if that's not enough, call a professional. I'm serious. And don't pick that friend who always says, "Oh, baby," because you need somebody who loves you enough to say, "Hey, put on some lipstick. Let's get out of the house." Sometimes you need someone who loves you enough to push you a little bit. And a good therapist will do that too. So make sure you get help. If it becomes dangerously depressing, there are lots of suicide hotlines out there. There are lots of numbers you can call. There are apps you can fill out. There's all sorts of ways you can get help. Please do not stay alone. Get help. As a matter of fact, I think we should post some numbers at the end of this episode. We can look those up. Anyway, taking care of yourself. And it's not just women. Men go through it too. It's just some of their stuff is actually weirdly more obvious when they're going through their teens. They have an appendage that is doing whatever it wants, whenever it wants, frequently just because there's a good stiff breeze that goes with a good stiff something else. Yeah. And then as they get older, they start becoming a slave to that stiff whatever it is. And then the truly sad thing that happens for many men is the stiffness goes away and they feel betrayed. So they're going through all their shit too. So they may not be the best support for you because they're so focused on something they know and something they feel that they're not fully there for you. As a matter of fact, they may be blaming you for their problem, which isn't a problem. It's just a natural evolution. And yeah, maybe looking at a 22-year-old porn star will solve that temporarily, but you two are going to have to work on some stuff because your dynamic is changing. I heard a great expression this morning: reintroduce yourself to your partner. Sometimes you have to say, I've changed. You've changed. Hi, my name is Wonder Wendy. Tell me about you, sir, or ma'am, whoever your partner happens to be. Or maybe it's just your relationship with a roommate. If you aren't in a committed married relationship, you may have a live-in partner. You may have just someone who shares expenses with you. But living with another person is hard. It's still a relationship. So give yourself, here's that word again, grace, to reintroduce yourself to that person who is significantly in your life. Or it could be an employer. I want to rewrite the terms of our contract. I know I came into this relationship with one expectation and you had one expectation, but now I want to change that. I need to change that. Reinventing yourself and reintroducing yourself is so important. So here I am in my blanket fort, staying hydrated. As always, I actually feel pretty good. I know I'm telling you about mental health, but I'm feeling like just a few hours here will be all I need to restore myself. And then I can go out and face the world again because I have to. No, I have to. I want to. I don't want to live a life in a blanket fort. I like being connected to people most of the time, but not always. I call myself an ambivert. I'm so thrilled when I heard that word because the world thinks I'm an extrovert. And here's the funny thing. If I don't get time alone, I get seriously crazy, like crazy. And I didn't even know that I needed that for many years in my life. I was the youngest of six children. I am the youngest of six children. So when I was born, it was a very loud, boisterous household. But by the time I was 8, I was the only one still at home. Everybody else had gotten married and moved away. So suddenly I became an only child. My parents were older parents and frequently left me to my own devices. So if you look back at pictures, I do have friends. I do get out. I do things. I am involved in school. But there are lots of pictures of me having tea parties with dolls. There's a table set up in the end of the kitchen, and there are 4 chairs. They're all full, but only one has a living, breathing person inside it, me. So that's where I came from. I got charged up by spending time alone in creative play, in imaginary friends, or real friends that just happened to not be alive. And then as I got older, that didn't change very much through high school and everything. I had lots of friends, but again, lots of time alone because I was the only child at home. College, same thing. I never lived in a dorm and had a roommate, so I didn't have to deal with that. Right out of college, I got married for the first time. Now, you'd think that would have been a huge shock to my system. Okay, it was, because learning to live with another human being was really challenging. And maybe I should have done more blanket fort days during that time. But the really good news was he was a full-time Army officer. So he was only home about half the time. So again, I didn't know I was getting my blanket fort days because he'd just be gone. And quite honestly, when he stayed home for too long, that's when we finally got divorced because living together with him all the time was a lot. Then I got married again. My second husband and I worked different shifts. And so for most of our marriage, we didn't see each other a lot. We had a few hours a day, special weekends, vacations, but we had lots of time apart. And that worked for me. I didn't know I needed time alone. And quite frankly, when we both got on the same shift, again, that's when we got divorced. I think I got married for the third time. And my husband retired, and he was there the time. I should say, he is there all the time. So I'm very involved in the community. So I get time out of the house and I get time away from him. And we have things to talk about. And we travel very well together. But oh my goodness, there are times I just want to be home alone for a few days in my little blanket fort. So I've learned I'm an ambivert. I present as an extrovert, but I need my time alone. And I've also discovered there are lots of others like me. So find what feeds your soul, whether it's being out and among people or being home alone, and find balance because everybody needs a little bit of both.